to What the Hell Are We Doing? Because we're not knowing what we're doing here. And I'm here with Rob, who's the owner of West Bay Acadia Campground, and we are trying to get a little better understanding of this journey of this wonderful boutique, as you called it, campground. So tell us a little bit about the history of West Bay Arcadia and how you came to do this in Maine.
All right. Well, Peggy and I had lived in Florida for about 20 years, and we have been camping our whole lives since we were kids. And in the last 12 years or so, we have been coming up to Maine every summer, because from Florida, well, let's put it this way. People go to Florida, they will tell you, for the weather. But what you discover is when people go to Florida for the weather, what they do is they stay indoors the entire year because it's just too darn hot outside. Well, we had that same kind of experience, that it was too hot. And so in searching for cooler areas, we went north, and Acadia was a place that, because we were familiar with it from being kids, we had a fondness for it, and we kept coming back here year after year after year. And every year we came back, we discovered it was harder and harder and harder to find a campground that we either could get in, or if we got in, we wanted to be. Many campgrounds just did not live up to our expectation of what a campground could be. In many cases, they were glorified sardine collection spots for many cans of sardines. And we did not feel like...
Airstream, that does look like...
It does. It looks a little bit like an aluminum sardine can. But we didn't want to feel like sardines. And we feel that, in general, if you're camping and you can tell what your neighbors are talking about, it's probably you're too damn close.
And how long had you been camping like that? Were you doing like full time, where you were going all over the place?
Not full time, but let us say every summer.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time traveling, and during the rest of the year, whenever we could.
In the same Airstream, or
yes, in the same. Well, we had the Airstream we have now, which is a 30-foot Flying Cloud, is our second Airstream. The first one was a 27-foot, so they're very similar. But we have figured out how to, like many RVers, we figured out how to pack the most essential things, which is just about everything you can cram in to your vehicle.
Yeah.
And so we kept coming to Maine, and we kept finding it more and more difficult to find a place we wanted to park that we liked. And so we decided, well, let's just find a piece of property that we could put our Airstream on. We were looking for something small, like, a couple acres. And we discovered that as we looked for those small pieces of property, we came up against a brick wall. The brick wall was that there was zoning, which meant if you wanted to have a piece of property on the water, which is what we did, and you were going to try to get something that was under 5 acres, it was likely zoned residential, which meant they did not want you or anything that reminded them that you might be anything related to a mobile home. Now, we don't think of ourselves as having a mobile home. You wouldn't think.
The home that happens to be mobile.
That's correct. That is different. That is different. It is not a white rectangular box.
Yes. Not a manufactured home.
No, it is not. It is manufactured.
Yes.
It is home, but it's not one of those homes. The moment you put a sofa outdoors and consider that part of your yard, you have crossed over from the RV world into Bubble Land.
Yeah.
And we did not want that. So as we started to look at the land, we got more and more frustrated because we couldn't find anything on the small side. So we said, okay, let's broaden our horizons. Let's look at bigger pieces of property. And lo and behold, we found that after you hit 20 acres, all of a sudden, you didn't run into the little zoning roadblocks. So we pulled out all the stops. We ended up looking at over 60 properties in Maine. And we lucked out and found this one, which is 33 acres. And when we arrived at this, we went, you know what? This is a whole lot more than the 2 acres we started off looking for. Yeah. And it's big enough, and it has potential. to actually be a whole campground, not just a campsite. So we said, okay, let's see what we can do to make this a campground. And if we were going to do that, what would we do? And then we just reflected for a moment.
Years of experience.
We had years of experience being frustrated with stuff we did not want.
Yeah.
So we started with what we didn't want, and we said, fine, we won't do that, we won't do that, we won't do that. And then what we got left with was all the things we wanted to do that everybody else wanted to do, it turns out, because we talked with lots of people. And we asked them what was an ideal campground and what was an ideal campsite. And they told us.
And when you, when we first talked with you on the phone, trying to decide whether, we were going to bite the bullet and and come here for a month, you had said something to me that resonated because I came from a world that talked about the voice of the customer, and you had some experiences from not just with campgrounds, but prior to settling down, so to speak, with the voice of the customer. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, my goodness, that is a long story, so I'll see if I can truncate it and, yes, give you a highly, highly abridged version. So my prior career was about 38 years in management consulting, and what I focused on was helping senior leaders of complex organizations, all different kinds, figure out what their customers actually wanted, and then help them to figure out how to give it to them. Yeah. And so with that background, I've worked with many, many organizations all over the world, thousands of people. I've written many books on it. And so I developed a system for doing that very thing, figuring out what's the strategic direction of the business and how does that relate to what customers want and how do you integrate all of that and align everything. Mm-hmm. So that was the background we had. So my lovely wife Peggy and I, having worked in that business for many years, when we decided that we were going to build a campground, we couldn't help ourselves. We simply applied what we knew. Yeah. All of a sudden, we're the executives of a two-person business. And so we looked in the mirror every day and we said, you know what? If things don't go well, that's who to blame, right there. So we didn't want to have that picture. So we applied what we knew. And that meant a lot of things. One is we had to say, what is our vision and how do we make that concrete? It was not just a vision for our personal enjoyment, but when we looked at Maine, one of the things we discovered was that Maine is the poorest state in all of New England, economically. Mm-hmm. Well, the county that we're in, which is where this part of Acadia National Park is one of the 3 poorest counties in the state of Maine. So we're talking about being at the bottom of the pile, which meant that we thought we could probably change that picture because the people that were likely to come to our campground, we thought, if we did it the way we had been hearing about it from other people, all the things they really wanted, not in terms of features, but in terms of experience. Mm-hmm. They would bring their money with them. Mm-hmm. And they would leave a bunch of that money here. Yeah. And so that means the local people who don't have much would get some. Yeah. And then it would be a win-win-win. Mm-hmm. That was our thought. And you know what? It's actually been happening.
Wow. And you have how many sites? How many sites are here in your campground?
We have 24 sites. 24. Yes, and we have no plans at the moment to do more than that. And that actually is part of, you called it a boutique campground. That's sort of what makes it a boutique campground. For example, as most of us know, as RVers, or campers in general, what we know is we know that there is a tendency nationally to put as many people in a postage stamp spot as it's possible to do and not have them die of suffocation. Well, we just
set each other on fire.
Or set each other on fire or kill each other or do a variety of other bad things. Yeah. And we decided that what we ought to do is we ought to make sure that people had elbow room And so we designed the dimensions of the perfect RV site. And we designed, like any other product, if you just build a product with no design, you're going to get schlock. Well, we put design in first. Amazing concept, but we did. And it was based on the voice of the customer, meaning all the people that we had talked with over the years who told us what they liked and what they didn't like. And unfortunately, there was a lot more in the didn't like category than in the like category. For example, every campground I've ever stayed at advertises free Wi-Fi, which is a myth. If they have it, I haven't experienced the Wi-Fi. I've experienced the free part, but when it's free and you don't get it, that really doesn't count. So we said, you know what? We're going to put in fiber. We're going to have blazing corporate quality Wi-Fi. And we're going to match that with nature.
Right.
Nobody happened to see that particular model, evidently, but us. So when we did it, that required us to figure out what is blazing speed here. And we found that we couldn't get it because there was no infrastructure in Maine to deliver that.
Yeah, that was one of our biggest concerns, because as we were thinking, okay, we're going to be close by, nature, and nature usually comes with lots of connectivity obstacles, let's say. And since we were both working remotely, that was a considerable challenge. It's always one of the first things that we look at is like, what are we going to be coming into? Because of the nature of what I do and the nature of what Teresa does, we need that's our primary concern. So yes, you may have connectivity or speed there, but that doesn't mean that that's as fast as you need it to be. So when we communicated with you, and you showed us your website, and you see, okay, you have your hot, your regular speed, which is fast, but then you have a premium, and then you have connected Ethernet as an option. I was like, sold. This. There is no way that I'm not going to be able to get connected because they now have wired Ethernet at each individual site. How did that come to pass? Because you obviously how do you get high speed internet at a nature site combined?
Well, for us, we had to beat the system because the system was stacked against us. What I discovered was that the single purveyor of fiber and broadband here in Maine, in this area, was not going to provide anything to us because they thought we were a residence. But when they told me that made me think, oh, well then, they don't provide it for a residence, but I know you're here, so that must mean by default you must do this for a business. And I asked them that. Well, then would you do this if we were a business? Like if we were a 24-room hotel, would then we qualify to have this high-speed broadband? And the answer was, oh, you're going to build a 24-room hotel? And we said, well, kind of. We're going to build a 24-site campground.
These rooms are movable.
Yes, and they're in nature, and they function the same way as a hotel room as it relates to broadband. So the company said, oh, well, we'd like to work with you. And so we got them to work with us. So we have both fiber and coaxial here because those two technologies, those pipes, if you will, kind of complement each other. And so we also thought that it was not a good thing if we would do that and then charge you as a campground visitor extra money, because for us who are remote workers, as we have been for many years and you have been, we view broadband like water.
Yeah.
You have to have it or you die.
Yeah, there's the water, there's the electricity, and there's the sewer hookups. This is now, one of those gotta have.
That's it.
Things.
That's the whole package.
Yeah.
And you ought to have it 24/7 because, you might wake up in the morning see the beautiful sunrise here, see the trees right next to you, maybe hear the birds, and decide you're going to do some work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why shouldn't you be able to do that? Why do you have to wait till 2 a.m. when all the other folks have gone to bed and now you have Wi-Fi?
Right.
No, no, no.
But because you're so close to them at the other places, you can tell when they've gone to bed.
That's true. You can hear them snoring. We thought that was too close.
Yeah.
So the campsites we designed were large enough so that you could actually go and meet your neighbors if you wished, but if you didn't want to, you could stay the heck away,
Right.
and you'd be okay.
And you've said a couple times since we've been here that you call this the cheers of of campgrounds, where everybody knows
Your name.
Your name.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that culture that you've kind of created.
Well, now you've actually asked a couple questions that are related, which are very good. The last thing you said was culture, and I want to start with that one because my whole career is about how do you create a high performance culture. Well, that was in the corporate world. We're not after a high performance culture. We're after a low performance culture, if you want to think about it like that, in certain ways.
Right.
Well, so where were we? I got
talking about Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers campsite.
Yes.
Cheers
So what we discovered there was a weird relationship. The weird relationship on the culture goes like this: if you worked in an urban area, you lived in an urban area, and you were right next to neighbors on every side of you, the likelihood that you want to actually meet those neighbors and spend any time with them is about zero.
Mm-hmm.
But we found that, interestingly, the further away you are from them, the more curious you are about them, and you want to go meet them,
right.
or at least you're open to that possibility.
Yeah.
So that's what we found. We found that if, in fact, you do not have to smell what they're having for breakfast, you might want to actually invite them to join you for a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. In fact, what we've discovered is, out of our 24 sites, if you're here for, as you have been here for some length of time, there's an excellent chance that you have met many of the other campers and had a conversation with them, probably in unlikely places, like on the way to the dumpster every morning.
Right.
Does that happen?
Yes, it does.
There you go.
It takes much longer to throw out your trash around here.
It does. It does. So that's part of what we were wanting to do. We wanted to create a place where people of like spirit felt like they belonged. And since we have built this campground, which we started if we start with the day we bought it, which was the end of September in 2019, what we have discovered is that people, many of our guests tell us that they have felt like they came home here. And when we ask them about that, it's like, well, I feel like I've made friends here. Mm-hmm. And that's not because we have had dances,
right,
and
activities,
swing your partner round and round. No, I mean, we could do that, but that's not the kind of activities that we have. Mm-hmm. But we do have a community garden. Mm-hmm. So all of our vegetables that we planted are open and free for everybody to come and help themselves. Well, when you're an RVer and you've been, as you have been, on the road for a long time, many people miss the garden they used to have. Mm-hmm. Well, when they come here, they have a garden. That's one thing they have.
Yeah, and I've seen people, tending to it, because
they're,
let's go.
They take their kids.
Yeah.
We've had this weird thing where initially, for people who haven't quite read enough on the website to know what they're about to get themselves into, come to the realization that we don't have the swimming pools, the hot tubs, the Yogi Bear in the background. We don't have all these things. We have nature. We have moose. We have deer. We have eagles. We have osprey. We have, let's see, we have gray seals in the bay. And that means that sometimes people think, oh, there'll be nothing to do. Huh. That's kind of part of the deal with camping.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything. You can just sit and enjoy nature, and that's what's happened. So when people do get together here for an event, it might be a gourmet dinner that involves lobster.
Yeah.
Have you been to one of those?
No, we haven't. We haven't made it there. We've been hoping that we could squeeze that.
You've been too darn busy.
I know. Yeah, I mean, for staying here a couple times, we've been gone more than we like
Yes.
to. So for how long we've been, so we definitely want to get that in.
But when you do that, what happens is you sit with people you don't know necessarily.
When you had the 4th of July, you know, it was a nice little get together. Everybody kind of brought a dish, and
Yes.
it was very communal.
Yes.
That was an awesome experience. And tell me a little bit about some of the things I've noticed over the month that we've been here is how serendipitous things have just kind of fallen in place for you.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure it's been a long and struggle journey to get to where you are today. But like how you talk about Olivia and your naturalist study, and how that came.
Well, we have been blessed. Let's call it that. People have come to us out of the blue, truthfully, through no particular action on our part. They have found us. So Olivia would be only one of the latest. So Olivia's a young lady who has just graduated this past fall in the study of nature. Let us call it that. It encompasses a whole bunch of things. And she and her fiance had decided that they were going to come to Maine from Rhode Island, where they were resident, and that this was going to be the place they wanted to go and spend time. And so they were looking for campgrounds, and they found our website. And when they found the website, Olivia went, "Oh, look at this! This is a campground that actually promotes immersion in nature. Ooh, I think I would like to be there." So she contacted us, and she said, I understand that you do something called work camping at your campground. That is, I could do some work here, maybe, and I could have free lodging. Is that how that works?" And we said, "Yes, it is. That is how that works." And then we had a conversation with her. But she's only one of the latest. So one of the earliest people was Mike, our guy who is our IT wizard. So I mentioned to you that we had lived in Sarasota for 20 years, in Florida. Well, when we came here to Maine and we started looking into broadband, a funny thing happened. One of our neighbors here, next to us, here in Maine, took a shine to what we were doing. They were intrigued by what we were doing. They thought we were crazy on the one hand, but they also thought that we were inspiring to them. And so he contacted, his name's Tom, he contacted a journalist friend of his that he had worked with for many years and told her that she ought to come over and interview us because he thought that we were doing cool stuff and she should know that. So she did. She came over and interviewed us, wrote an article in the paper. That article got picked up by other periodicals, one of which was a camping magazine. Mike, our buddy in Sarasota, who we did not know at that time, had just moved his business from Chicago to Sarasota. He read the article on us, saw that we were interested in getting in broadband, and contacted us. And he said, "Gee, I see what you're doing up there. Who's working with you?" And I said, "Well, actually nobody, because we can't find anybody who can do what we want to have done." And he says, "Well, I'm doing that. Why don't we talk?" That's how we started.
And there you are.
There we are. That has happened repeatedly, again and again.
Our next door neighbor is helping you with some construction. He happens to be a general contractor, and
yes, Here's Josh. Josh is has a business in Pennsylvania.
Who incidentally went to the same high school as Teresa, my wife. So like it's such a small world, and we go, all these different places, and then you meet somebody that has some
Right.
similar connection.
And my bet is that because of the environment that you find yourself in here and the length of time you're here, you have a chance to actually meet people like Josh, have a conversation with them that's other than just, gee, it's a nice day today.
Mm-hmm.
And you discover this kind of thing. And that's why people talk about our campground as being a bit like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. They don't just know your name, they know something about your background. Right? And it's not just because they saw your picture on the wall in the post office.
Yeah. Clear enough. Yeah.
So those things have happened to us.
Yeah.
And all of these people are great.
Calls it magic. Like she finds that there's something magical about this place. I have to agree. It certainly is not majestic. See if I can turn the camera here so we can kind of see out. But I did want to illustrate. I mean, like you can see, that's the water right there. I mean, if you can see it over, and you have it.
It's in tiers.
In tiers, so
yes.
that in addition to not being so close to your neighbor, you're also not obstructed by your front neighbors either. So everybody has a nice view of the water here, so you can enjoy that as you see fit.
Yes. So part of the design here, we decided that because we have the luxury of being on a tidal bay, and the view we have is to the east on the water, we thought, why don't we organize all of the sites to take into account the fact that we have a natural environment that begs to be enjoyed. And that meant if you had your RV pointed toward the sun when it rises in the morning, which is north-northeast because of our latitude here and this season, and that would mean that then your awning is going to open toward the east-southeast, which means you have the maximum view possible, except for one thing, and that is that if you have an RV right next to you, you're not going to see any of that. So we arranged all of the RVs into 4 tiers, each tier being roughly about 12 to 15 feet higher than the one in front. So the people who are closest to the water are lowest. They have the lowest tier. If you're at the back end, if you will, of the tiers, you are higher up, and you see over the tops of everybody else. So here's a chance for you to be in a campground and pretend like you are the only one here.
Right.
Which is what you kind of want in a campground.
Exactly.
You don't want to be reminded that you have neighbors that are between you and anything you'd like to enjoy.
Exactly. Again, you don't have to.
No.
You can if you want. Right?
Yes.
Most of your sites here are pulled through, which is, again, it's a blessing. When you have that. There's a few that are back in, which we are currently in. And that was a little challenge to get that in there. That's the first time I may have said a few colorful words trying to back in, but
but you can do it.
But you can do it, yeah.
And you have a big rig.
Yes.
Well, so the design of the sites, other than about 3 sites out of 24, all of them will accommodate a Class A motorhome. That's by design, and the vehicle you may be pulling. Mm-hmm. And you have that. In your case, because you're up against the woods in the back, well, you have to back in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you wouldn't be up against the woods. You'd be up against some road. And so that's the story there. But you got everything in. Mm-hmm. You didn't take out a tree or a rock.
Nope.
And you still have all of your fenders.
Yeah. And with the exception of the screw that I picked up, which was not your fault. Because I did have all the tires.
Yes, right. And that screw, I don't know where it came from, but it didn't come from here.
Yeah.
It Came from somewhere or other, and you've been traveling with that for a while. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that souvenir you just lost.
But, you know, again, that speaks to the culture that you've created. Josh, our next door neighbor, he fixed it.
He brought out his tools, and he has every tool you can imagine while he's mobile. And if he didn't have the tool, you would have come to me, and I would have the tools, because I got 4 containers up here that are, 10 by 40, and they're filled with stuff that's useful material. So yeah, that's exactly right. You're in essentially a quasi sort of urban environment where it matters, and you're in nature where it matters simultaneously.
It's a nice balance that you've created between functionality and nature, right? And I really appreciate you taking the time, to talk to us a little bit about it, and really appreciate you and what you've created here, and we look forward to coming back when we can get this way again. So thanks again for sticking with us and telling us that you couldn't hear us.
Well, it was a joy, and it's been a great pleasure to have you and Teresa here, and the little 4-footed furry guy.
Yeah, he's starting to wonder where we are.
But he's calm.
Yeah,
he's calm because he knows he's safe,
mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things we've actually heard from people too, is which we were surprised with, in a way, because we didn't set out to make a safe environment, but people knew that safety comes from the absence of people who are obnoxious. Yeah. And fortunately, just good luck.
Yeah.
We don't have obnoxious guests here. We have nice guests.
Yeah.
Which is like you and Teresa. So thank you for coming.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.